Welcome to I Finally Get It, where real people share real life lessons so you can have a real good life. Have you ever felt like your company's culture didn't really align with your personal values? On today's episode, we're sitting down with Cherie, the CEO of BBR Creative, where she explains how she discovered a beautiful way that aligns your personal values with your company's culture. In studio today, as always, Dustin Webb, our producer. I'm your host, Jeff Martin, and here's my interview with Cherie Hebert. Let's get it. So today we have one of my favorite people in the world, Cherie Hebert. Cherie is the owner of BBR Creative, a wonderful marketing agency here in town. Cherie, welcome to I Finally Get It.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm happy to be here.
It's so good to have you. Tell me about the moment you said, I finally get it.
Well, you know, Jeff, after 26 years in business, there have been multiple moments when you have a challenge and you learn something new and then you say, I get it. And sometimes that takes a long time. But the most recent time, I mean, when you called and asked me to be on this podcast, I really was racking my brain, but only for a minute, because I know exactly what my most recent aha moment was. So I belong to a Vistage group in New Orleans, which is a group of CEOs. And we had a guest speaker. His name was David Friedman. And he wrote a book called Culture Wise. And he was coming to speak to this group of, business owners about culture in a business. And he said this one thing. He said, culture lives in the way we get things done. And what that meant to me is that the behaviors of people live in culture. And I just knew at that moment, and there's a lot of reasons why that's so impactful to me, but I thought, I finally get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah. It, again, you're speaking my language, because culture is so important for companies. But execution, getting stuff done. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, if you can't execute, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So let's talk about BBR, how long you've been in business. Okay. And so I know that you are one of the founding members.
That's right. And there were 4 of us at the very beginning. 3 of us were designers and the 4th was a CPA. So we needed that controller, right, to teach us about the business aspect, because we were 3 art majors going into business together. One of the first things we did, and it wasn't even intentional, it was just something we felt we needed to do, is that we established a list of our core beliefs collectively. And we lived by those beliefs. We started with those beliefs and we agreed to them and we lived by them. We didn't really know that that was a thing that businesses did. We knew that businesses had core values, those values that everybody has: excellence, quality, integrity. But ours were different. Ours were, beliefs that you could actually, they were more like behaviors. Yeah. They were things like never leave a man alone, like the Marines. Weren't you a Marine?
That's right.
There were beliefs like, treat your clients as your partners. Their success is your success, things like that. And we established that list early on, and it was rather long. And I think they got embedded to the culture early on. And one of the things I'm most proud about with BBR, and the fact that we have sustained a business for this long, a creative advertising business, I am proud to say we have a very good reputation in this market.
You really do.
We have a good reputation. And we have a place that people want to come work. We have people want to work for BBR. And when I look back, the day I met David Friedman and heard him say that, it really made me think about how did we get from there to here? And how did we build reputation? And how did we build the culture when people would say, oh, I heard you had a great culture. How did we do that? And it was through behavior. It was through modeling behavior. It was through documenting behavior. It was through living by behavior. And a lot of things have changed over the last 26 years.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Fundamentally, we are still a creative agency, but we moved from being a design firm to an ad agency buying media, being a digital firm. So we've had so many different people come in and come out, hired, got new jobs. My business partners have now all left. Yeah. They've retired. They've gone on to do other things. So there's been a lot of change. But how did we keep the constant? And when he said that day, which was only a few months ago, it really made me think about our business and about the longevity and the legacy of the business moving forward. And how do you maintain culture long term? And what does culture mean? Because a lot of people think culture just means the fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to believe that the work y'all did up front was the foundation that you built. And that's why it lasted so long. And that's probably why it resonated when Friedman said that. That's why it resonated so much, is because y'all execute. I've worked with you in the past. I'm going to tell you, BBR executes. I want to ask you one thing though. I love how the name BBR came up. I know it, but tell everybody else how BBR, the name came up.
Well, when we were younger and we were designers, Kathy, Sarah, and I, Sarah Ashe, Kathy Pavi, and myself, we were designers and we were working at the Graham Group. And then we went to work for Davis Partners. There were other ad agencies in Lafayette, and the Graham Group is still here. And we were working together. We actually went to college together too, but we didn't really know each other that well in school. But Sarah has really deep, beautiful red hair. It's a very unique color. Not many people have it. And Kathy is a true blonde, like a real blonde. And I naturally was a brunette. And when we were going into business, we sat on my back porch. And I remember we would meet to have all these plans about how we were going to put a business plan together to go in business for ourselves. And we had the desire to do that. And we were trying to come up with a name for our business. And we had, the previous year, we had created a little logo and had 3 paintbrushes like intersecting, and 3 little paintbrushes. And they were, a brunette, a redhead, and a blonde, and said, blondes, brunettes, redheads, we create pretty stuff. And we made this little logo, and we would make stationery and things for our families, and we'd stamp it with blondes, brunettes, redheads, we make pretty stuff. And so when it was time when we evolved and we're going to go into an agency, we said, well, we have to be more professional than that. That sounds like, little, we don't know. Are we going to be taken seriously? So we tried every name in the book, and then we landed on BBR Creative. And if nobody asked us, we weren't going to say what it stood for. But when we did say what it stood for, we became a lot more memorable. And when we were together and we took pictures together, or we were featured together in a magazine article or something, we were memorable. And people still love it today. But the joke is now, and I know you're going to know what I'm about to say, is it's like for a long time we were BBR Creative trying to stay that way. You know what I mean? BBR trying to stay that way. And so, and I'm trying to stay that way, but we are a female-owned business, and we are a female-run business. And I think part of this culture discussion has to do with the nurturing of an environment that's conducive to supporting people. And our purpose as an organization is to promote goodwill with our clients, with one another, and with the community at large. And I think that nurturing piece, look, a lot of times I got a lot of flack in my Vistage meetings for running a lifestyle business and not being as profit focused as I should be or could have been. But we were also employing women who are raising families and raising children, and that was conscious decisions. So I went from the BBR, fun, playful thing, but the seriousness part of it is that we are still woman-owned, women-led, and we have our executive team is women. And it's not that we don't like guys. We have some guys working for us. We just built a culture around the supporting the family, supporting females, that kind of thing. And I'm trying to stay brunette as we speak.
Yeah, well, I'm going in reverse. I'm going blonde again. I was blonde when I was a kid, and I'm turning blonde quickly. One of the things in his quote about how you get things done, which I absolutely love. I'm going to have to pick up that
culture is the
book.
way in which you get things done.
Do you feel like you've always been able to execute and get things done? Because today, y'all get things done around the community, internally, but for your customer, your clients. Has there ever been a challenge?
We're dedicated because I'm going to go to our 4 core beliefs, right? Number 1 is be a decent human being. Number 2 is be engaged, be inspired, and be innovative. Number 3 is figure it out. And number 4 is treat clients as partners. Now, obviously, there's a lot of meaning behind each one of those, but those are where we landed today. And this is a lot shorter list than we had way back in the day, but there's a lot of depth to each one. However, when I heard David Freeman talk, he wrote, I think I told you, right? He wrote the book Culture Wise. What he suggested is put your core values on a shelf for a minute. And let me just talk to you about behavior change in an organization. And he used the Ritz-Carlton example to describe what he was talking about. And do you know much about the Ritz-Carlton?
No, I've studied a little bit, and
okay.
I'm a huge fan.
What I think is fascinating is that they actually have a list of like 25 behaviors. And what they do is every week, and this was all from the top down, right? They established 25 core behaviors that was important to the organization that aligned with the CEO vision and the vision of the company. And each week, everywhere in the whole entire world, you're going to go to behavior 1, and they're going to talk about behavior 1 for the entire week in every Ritz-Carlton around the world. So if behavior 1 is, and I'm just making this up because I don't know what their behaviors are, but if it's help every customer, every guest you come into contact with, make it your mission to help every guest. Well, when they have a Monday morning meeting, they go into great depth. When they have a Wednesday meeting, go into great depth. An email goes out to everybody, in depth. Friday. So it becomes ritualistic the way that they reinforce that behavior. Right? So behavior 1 is week 1. Behavior 2 is week 2. Behavior 3. Then when they get to 25, they start all over again.
Yeah.
By the end of a year, right? Divide 25 into days of the year. And that's how many times they'll receive that message. But there is no doubt that every single person from the janitor to upper management doesn't receive that message. And that is how they create a culture of high standards and high delivery on their promise to their guest.
That's right. And you can't say you haven't heard it.
You can't say you haven't heard it. So the aha moment for me, and I finally got it, was, okay, we have great core values. We hire by our core values. We talk about our core values. I can tell you some programs we do internally that reinforces our core values. But when I got the idea that documenting the behaviors that are necessary for a team for the longevity and legacy of the business, that's important to me. And that's what I'm working on right now. Based on that, I finally got it moment is documenting the most important behaviors that I would like to see in the agency moving forward.
So like the hotel chain, the CEO came up with the vision. You doing this alone and you're working this?
Well, I believe that in my case, I'm the owner and the CEO at this time, right? Yeah. And I believe that as part of my legacy, it's my responsibility for having the vision of the business and growing it to this level to leave behind that gift of these are the things that made us good.
Yeah.
These are the things, these actions made us better. One action I like to tell my people is never leave a meeting without leaving behind a good idea. The behavior is a little deeper than that. Actually, the guy, David Freeman, has this little fold up wallet size card that has all 25 of his behaviors and hands them to all his people, and they have to they're quizzed on them and things like that. But I'm trying to document mine right now. Although I think I have a great basis to work from, I also took my newest employees. I had a new wave of some employees. I probably had 4 that got hired at the same time. And I took them to lunch one day and I told them ahead of time, I'd like you to share with me what is different about working here. What have you noticed over the last 2 months that you work here? What have you noticed that didn't exist in the last place you worked or that you're just pretty surprised about? But they can also tell me things they didn't like, right? And we went to lunch and they shared that insight with me. And that helped. I did a lot of things like that just to make sure that I had really uncovered, right, the authentic things that were going on in the agency. But I have the choice, right? Because if I want to shape it a little bit different, I may or may not include those because it's not about what we're doing now. It's about what I want to continue, but all of them were in line with what I valued. That's kind of a thing that I'm working on right now.
I love that. And I appreciate the process. When you get done, is that something that you would share publicly? Is that something, because we'll do show notes and we'll have how they might be able to reach out to you. But I think that's something that
I don't see any reason why I wouldn't share the 25 behaviors that make BBR special, because nobody is going to ever be able to duplicate
They're yours.
My business exactly like I and my business partners have created it and the team that works with it. They can't do that exactly. So I don't think it's that proprietary, right? Yeah. I think that it's just important. And some of the things like honoring commitments, one has to do with honoring commitments. And it's doing what you say you're going to do by when you say you're going to do them. And that's not only to your customer, but to one another. Yep. And renegotiating if you can't get that done. That whole behavior right there is really another behavior. Kathy and Sarah, I mentioned it a little early, but this was a behavior. See, I'm from the ad agency days when we used to spend the night at work. Okay. There was a time back in the day when I first started in this career that you working at an ad agency and you're working on a big campaign and everything's due the next day. And you literally just spend the night and keep working. Wow. You work around the clock to get this work done. There was no going home at 5:30. Okay. And that was not a good time for my family life, for my children. My husband brought my children to visit me at work before. It was not a great time. But at the same time, Kathy and Sarah and I worked together in an ad agency. And if Sarah had a big project to do, we would stay and help her until she was finished. We would not leave and go home. So together, we'd say, well, let me have this piece and I'll take that piece and we're going to help you. So we did not leave each other in a lurch. And that attitude has still, people at my office don't spend the night, but it's still pervasive in a help your buddy attitude.
Yep. I love that. That's huge. So when we run into each other again, or when you finish the 25, if you think about it, I'll update the notes from here so people can find that.
But I would encourage people, they could read the Culture Wise book. I'm not getting any royalties from it, but
I'll put that there too.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. If you had someone that is running a company like you, especially a woman-owned company, and they want to create that, what are some words of advice you would give them to nail down their culture, make sure that it's about...
If they were starting out?
Yeah.
Well, I think you asked me if somebody else helps with this. And I believe that the owner, the founder is basically building a culture based on their own personal belief system. And that personal belief system came from your family. Mm-hmm. It came from whatever religion if you're religious or if you're spiritual. It came from past job experiences. It's the things that you personally value. And I think if you start a list of 10 things that you personally value, they don't have to be business related, but they can translate into business. And what are some things that have happened to you? What kind of customer service do you expect? How do you want to treat other people? My mother, that woman talked to anybody. Okay. My mother, when we were kids, we lived in a little small town. We'd go to the grocery store. She was a school teacher. We'd go to the grocery store. My mama would talk to anybody from the person putting out the produce, to the janitor, to the guy, picking up the buggies, to the owner of the company. She treated everybody the same. And that's something that I have with this business that I really believe in. Like when you go to somebody's office, do not treat the person answering, the door, sitting at the reception desk any different than you're going to treat the CEO.
Amen.
Yeah. And so that was a family core thing. That wasn't a business thing, but it evolved to a business thing. I think people overlook doing this though.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
I think
for sure.
People think I've got a product, I got a service, I know I could go into business and I could do great. I'm here to tell you that fundamental value system is what makes you better longer. I didn't even have that intention when I started. I was just trying to we were just trying to come up with some rules to play by, our own rules to play by. But now looking back, when you say I finally got it, after 26 years, I finally got it.
Yeah.
And as I'm passing the torch to the next level of leadership, because I will be exiting the business soon. And when I'm passing the torch, I said to them, I want to leave behind these behaviors to you. And I want you to know that, in my opinion, the things that got us to where we are now were this. You're going to have a new vision for the future, which is great. And those things can change. But if you hold true to a lot of these things, then they're fundamental and you'll be successful. Yeah.
Yep. Man, that's huge. That is huge.
I like to talk.
You like to talk, but you make sense. And I really appreciate it. Always, you've answered what I typically ask the last question, but just make it a little more concise.
But I was a little bit of a ball hog.
No, you are great. This is wonderful. Let me ask you this last question just to close things out. You've really answered my question. It's basically, how do you leave people different and better? But in this case, I want to know how you are leaving the company different and better because the people that are in there, they're taking over.
I like to think it's based on these philosophies, right? It's a lot of little things. And I don't really have a philosophy around this as much to say as my brother is a really good businessman. He's a PT actually, but he owns several clinics and he's just good at business. He owns a lot of other things, but he's good at business. And we went fishing. My brother's a deep sea fisherman and he brought me deep sea fishing recently out of Empire. Went snapper fishing and he's got a nice boat and he's got all this equipment. And when I tell you that guy can just drive right to where the fish are, drop lines and we catch. I mean, we catch so many, we can catch our limit on snapper, but then we moving on to catch lemon fish or some other fish. And I said to him, how did you get to a point where you can just know exactly where to go to catch fish? And he said, it's not one thing. It's a lot of little bitty things. It's the line. It's the exact bait. It's the way we tie the knots on the line. It's the depth. It's where he said, it's so many small things. And over the years, I've just spent so much time perfecting the small thing. And so
I think that's another light bulb moment right there.
Yes. When I use that same analogy for the business and I think about these behaviors, the reason that was appealing to me too is because it's not 4 core beliefs. It's multiple behaviors that each are so small and minute, but when you put them together, they are able to create a business culture that's sustainable. And that has allowed us to be successful despite economic downturns and the losing of partners. And listen, business long-term is not easy. When you asked me to come on and talk about, I finally get it, there's a challenge every day. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are challenged, lose clients, there was an error on something, don't have enough capacity. There's always a challenge, right? So these fundamental small little tweaks is what kind of keeps you afloat, right? Finding the fish during the whole thing. So when you say, what am I going to leave behind? I personally hope that these behaviors are the legacy I leave behind. And so I'm spending time on them right now. They're not actually out there in the world. I'm fine tuning them. I went back and looked at all of the things we've done and I'm fine tuning those. And that's what I want to leave behind. We're doing it. We're doing it already. We just don't have it all captured.
Thanks for joining us this week on I Finally Get It. You can learn more about Cherie and all of the information she shared during the episode on our show notes. See you next week when we sit down with Ryan Owens, owner of Owens Flight Training, where he shares how to move away from the day-to-day. Make sure to visit ifinallygetit.com and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel or any of the podcast streaming services you may use. Until next time, learn real life lessons so you can have a real good life.